This is the beautiful city of York in the north of England, strategically located almost halfway between London and Edinburgh. This has been an important centre for all of the civilisations in the UK, beginning with the Romans, the Vikings, the Normans, right up until the present day. And because of this tremendous history, it attracts more than 6 million people a year, both Brits and overseas visitors. They come to walk the ancient city walls, to visit the beautifully preserved medieval shopping streets of the Shambles, to cruise on the River Ouse, to visit the National Railway Museum, the greatest in the country, and perhaps even to place a bet at the famous York races. Above all, of course, they come here to see this, the magnificent York Minster, one of the greatest Gothic cathedrals in all of Europe. And because York attracts so many visitors, perhaps not surprisingly, it's spawned a remarkably vibrant and cosmopolitan dining and nightlife scene. You know, they say there are more pubs in York than there are days of the year. Welcome to another episode of Sherry Aficionado, and it's a very special one for two reasons. Firstly, because it's International Sherry Week, and secondly, because this is the first time we've produced a film outside of Spain, and we're here in the wonderful city of York. York's famous for many things, but it's also the home of confectionery giant Rowntree's and two very famous products, the Yorkie Bar and the Kit Kat, both of which derive from here, now managed by Nestle. But whilst these are wonderful things, it's sherry, of course, that we're here to discover. These are wines that once dominated the world and made Jerez and the surrounding towns of the Sherry Triangle some of the richest places on earth. So over the last couple of days, we've been visiting various outposts of the newly discovered Ambiente group here in the north. But this is perhaps the most important one for me, because when I was in York in the summer, not at all in sherry mode, just really here as a tourist, I was looking at the map as I was trying to find my way back to my hotel, and I saw the magic words Tabanco. And Tabanco is not a word you see very often in any country or any place really outside of the Jerez region of Spain. So naturally, with my enthusiasm for sherry, I was intrigued, and I followed my Google Maps to Tabanco Ambiente. And luckily for me, in addition to having a warm welcome from the front of house and everything, Jim, who's the manager, happened to be, I think, on his evening off, sitting at the bar, heard me asking lots of stupid questions and in interrogating the menu and in looking at the wines, and turned around and said, "Hey, are you interested in sherry?" I spent a couple of hours together chatting. He cancelled a few arrangements that evening. Children didn't get picked up from school and things. And we started talking about our mutual love and interest in sherry. And that really led to us coming here and filming this episode of Sherry Aficionado here in York. So it was a terrific bit of kismet. Now, what I've learned subsequently from that is that also, as the Tabanco within the group, this is the place that sells the most sherry as a proportion of the total drinks that they sell here. So I'm intrigued to understand, one, maybe ask Jim to touch a little bit about his own background and his relationship with sherry, and then what the secret of his success is in promoting sherry, because I think it's all of us sherry aficionados would love to know. So Jim, over to you.
Well, I've been working for Ambiente now for 10 years. I originally came up and helped open up the Ambiente on Fossgate. Prior to that, I think sherry for me, like probably for most people, was something that maybe resided on the back of a hotel bar somewhere. I was probably familiar with Fino, maybe a cream sherry, and of course I just thought, as most people do, it was sort of one of those things that came out of Christmas. But of course, when I came on board, Rob, like most sort of rites of passage, when you come to work for Ambiente, you have to have a sherry or three if you get the job. So me and Rob went out, and he introduced me to the wonderful world of sherry. And of course, like most people, I was sort of blown away by, well, first the sort of array of sherry, and then I was also sort of bamboozled with everything from grapes to varieties and where everything's from. But I soon realised quite quickly that it's something not to be scared of. And I think, like most things, if you sort of persist and you drink and you sort of get to understand it, then yeah, you can broaden your knowledge. And now I don't profess to know everything about sherry. There's obviously an awful lot, but I think it would be probably fair to say I probably know more than most people. But I love it, and since working for the company for 10 years, I've been fortunate enough, we go over with work quite regularly. So yes, we've been to a lot of the bodegas and drinking sherry in the sun, the cobble streets of Jerez, as opposed to as opposed to that of York, has been a real eye opener. So as I've come back from Spain, I've gone, right, I've got this. I understand exactly what it's about, and I've connected the dots. So with regards to selling and promoting sherry here at Tabanco, I think what we try to do is we try to transport people to Spain, which of course is probably quite difficult on a rainy day in November.
Or a grey day later on outside today.
But I think what we do is I use sort of two words when I promote sherry is experience. And we sort of encourage and experience is what I say. And I test, people, we have nice little flights of sherry here at Ambiente.
Right, yeah.
And the introduction flight is a really nice one to do in terms of having three distinct styles of dry sherry. We have Gonzalez Byass as a producer on our introduction flight. We have Fino, Amontillado, and an Oloroso. So when I explain that to people, I'll just say, listen, if you'd like a little bit of experience with your tapas, then the introduction flight's a lovely thing to do. You get a nice bone-dry Fino, nice as a palate cleanser, of course, nice with fish. The Amontillado is really lovely with sort of, you can have it with nuts or sort of vegetables. I think asparagus season's one for where the Amontillado comes out, and of course and poultry. And then I always say Olorosos tend to go quite well at this time of year. That sort of nutty. I always think quite an autumnal drink. Nice with blue cheese and dark meats. And that's what people sort of enjoy drinking. I think from experience, a lot of people's palates tend to go towards Olorosos when first trying sherry. I think that's sort of a bit more depth of flavour. Is something that people is a little bit more palatable. But I always say to people that come on board with us, if you with the introduction flight, if you're not feeling the qualities or maybe the Fino is a bit too dry for you, then as you sort of come back down from an Oloroso into an Amontillado and a Fino, you can sort of pick up the qualities and then sort of bounce between. I think it's about putting those sherries into context, because of course as well, we have, for us, it's important that, sherry obviously comes with food, and that's, it's a perfect accompaniment with food. And, if people want to have an introduction flight after dinner, well, the customer's always right and they're more than happy to do so, but I would probably say, listen, that ship has probably sailed after dinner. Maybe we can move on to some things like palacotados, or stick on Oloroso with cheese boards, or push into sort of those cream sherries and everything dessert wine as well. So I think that's where we try to steer people, not in a condescending or way. It's just like if people want a cream sherry, or even if people want to come in and have a Pedro Jimenez straight off the bat, you know, as long as people are enjoying
Who are
sherry,
you to stop them? Yeah, exactly.
that's fine by us. So yeah.
And what kind of repeat business do you get from people?
Well,
who
here,
are
I mean,
committed?
you know, I mean, Tabanco, obviously a traditional Andalusian bar. It's got that sort of neighbourhood quality, and certainly, you know, Tabanco in York has that. You know, the street here from Warmgate has now got lots of new restaurants, lots of new accommodation, whether it's students or private accommodation, and then we're very lucky down here. We are very much a neighbourhood restaurant, so I think that's. When we have our regular wine events, and we've got Amelia Lustau coming today for our international sherry week, they sell out because we've got it's become a diners club for us. But I love it. I love working at Tabanco and Ambiente because, of course, when you open the door in the morning, yes, you've got that lovely lovely spread of tourists, which make up a large amount of our business. But the backbone here is a lot of the regulars, our bread and butter. So when they come in, we have a lot of people who are really into sherry. They love the enramas that we do when they come through the door. Right. We have a big song and dance about those. And it's a brilliant place to work in that regard. Sherry for me, well, and how it should be is with food, with tapas. And for me, you know, it's brilliant when serving people because it's great when you see the penny drop and they go, right, I get it. And of course, we know that there's lots of different styles of sherry, from your finos all the way up into, you know, your sweet Pedro Jimenez, and there's always one that someone's going to like. So for us, that reassures me and anyone coming on new who works with us that you can say, look, if people don't like the finos, then we can go into something else, and there'll always be something that they'll like. And so, and of course, if they go away having tried a couple, they know that they can come back and there's much more to try. And I think that's really lovely, you know, that's a really lovely thing about, you know, the, tapas, because there's lots of options. You can come several times over. And again, with our sherry menu as well.
Well, it sounds like you're going to continue to beat everyone else in terms of the proportion of sherry you manage to sell across the piece, as you should with a place called Tabanco, right?
Yeah,
it's only right.
Absolutely.
So it's been an absolute pleasure. We wish you all the best, and certainly next time I'm back in York, I look forward to popping by and continuing this story.
I'll make sure I'm not working again.
Salud y nos vemos.
Salud.
So Tim, absolute pleasure to be here across your empire here in the north. We've been, we were in Leeds yesterday for an amazing tasting experience, and thank you again for inviting us to that.
You're welcome.
That was superb, probably never to be forgotten. We visited also some of the different formats you've got across the piece, but I'd like to go back a little bit further in terms of how did you come, one, to open Spanish restaurants in this part of the world, and then secondly, perhaps we'll come back to how you ended up having sherry as such a fundamental part of what you do.
Okay, well, the first bit, we kind of opened as a bit of a sideline. Zoe and I were both in the building industry, and we opened in a little market town called Malton, which is about 20 miles towards Scarborough from York, which is our local town, because there was nowhere there that we kind of, at the time, felt suited our palate and style of eating.
Okay.
So we thought, if we feel like that, it's probably a lot of other people feel the same. So we opened a little place there. Spent 3 years there. Did it as tapas because it's kind of a nice way of eating. Lots of variety, lots of sharing. The food becomes kind of part of the conversation, and it's a very social way of eating. Introduced sherry as part of that on a small scale, probably 3 or 4 different sherries, and it was kind of just because we felt we should, because we were a Spanish restaurant. Right. After about 3 years, we knew the product was right, but there was kind of limited growth options in Malton, so we kind of picked it up and took it into York, into where we are now. So we opened here in 2010. So we finished service one night in Malton, put everyone in a transit van with all the kit, brought them down here, and we opened the next day. Not quite like that, but it seemed it at the time. We sort of ran with it as it was when we moved in for a few months, and then I think that the sherry thing had been kind of ticking away in the background, and we're thinking there's something in this. And we'd sort of maybe got to about 7 sherries on the list, and then we needed to redesign this front bar area, so we thought, right, we're going to make it a sherry bar. So we did a bit of research, went out to speak to the people at Lustau, I think we're around Bodega there, and then put together a list. And in doing that, we kind of it kind of encouraged our interest in it as a wine, and what fantastic value it is, what heritage there is involved in it, and just it's a really compelling drink. And we thought, at the time we were quite small, we were working front of house all the time, and so we could hand sell to people. So we'd give people a menu when they walked in, a wine list and a sherry list. Okay, and people would and we'd get 3 responses. One of them was they didn't look at it, they just threw it on the table and carried on looking at the wine list. Yeah. The other one was, great, sherry. You don't see much of that around, and they'd maybe pick something. But the one that was kind of the most interesting was the one that sort of looked at it and said, sherry, what's that about? And then that's kind of the foot in the door, and you start speaking to them about it. And each glass was a hand sell to start with, and each bottle was a hand sell. But over time, those people become regulars, and sherry becomes part of their experience, and it kind of builds from there. And I think that's how we got to where we did, and how it became larger parts of our offer.
Right, and it is, I mean, the Tabanco that you have a little bit further down the road that we were just at is probably the most prominent on that side of things, but it is very much a part of all of the operations you have.
I mean, I think where we're sitting now is probably the most sherry bar.
Right.
But although we call the other one Tabanco, it was just it was kind of differentiating. It was a sort of nod to the culture of Jerez. Yeah. But it really should be this one in some ways, because this one kind of feels like somewhere you'd walk into Instaville and stand at the bar and get a sherry and
funny enough, when I was speaking to your colleague Rob, I said that I came around. I was here a day early, so I came around and had a look at it. And I actually came in here and had a glass of Fino. Yeah. And the lady behind the bar actually said, Fino, well, we have a number of Finos, what you prefer, and explained the things to me. I said, okay, it's working. But I was saying, if we were going to talk, I'd love to do it here, because this does feel like the most atmospheric in many ways, and reminds you.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased we pulled that off, because that was always the intention.
You absolutely have. So we've been on our little tour of the different places you have now. What does the future hold for you and the group?
Well, we're at a size now where we're not particularly looking to get bigger. 5's kind of a nice number. It's manageable. Yeah. Our infrastructure is not sort of fully stretched, but it's kind of kept busy. But at the same time, we do kind of occasionally come across, or things pass our desk, where there's opportunities. Yeah. And I think we're not particularly looking for anything, but if something appealed, then we may be, we could be tempted.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's been fantastic spending some time with you and your team.
Okay, it's been great to host,
positivity, the amount of sherry we've managed to consume during the time has also been excellent. So thank you again, and
you're welcome.
Next time I'm in town, I will certainly pop
please
by.
do, yeah.
Cheers.
See us. Thank you.
This, I believe, is the first of the York-based Ambiente operations. And Louise, you're the manager here.
Yes, so I've been the restaurant manager here since May last year.
Okay.
It's been a year and a half.
So I'm always intrigued to ask people who are working kind of in the sherry and Spanish food world, how did you get into sherry? What's your journey been?
I originally moved to York about 8 years ago to do university. So I got a part-time job at the Ambiente Fosgate site. Okay. So I worked there part-time.
The other one?
Yeah, the other one. Way better. I started working there part-time and decided I really enjoyed hospitality. And at the time, the manager I had there was really, really passionate about sherry. So whilst I was doing my sherry training, he spoke very highly of it, and I got to interact with
it.
in food. It was Jim. Yes,
okay, right.
Jim Barber. He was very passionate about it. So learning through him, I got to understand the sherry as a drink, and also the way it sort of works alongside food and different ways to experience it. So I became very passionate about it. Right. Left university and pursued hospitality full time.
Okay. What did you study at university?
I studied psychology for a year and a half.
So thinking about psychology, which is a good basis, how do you kind of sell sherry to customers?
I think my favourite way to do it is understanding that not everyone knows about sherry. For sure. So I get a lot of customers coming in who know exactly what sort of sherry they like, and coming in directly with the flavour profile that they're looking for, and we help them find one that way. But obviously a lot of my staff members are students, so they come from the same background as me of never having tried sherry before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So teaching them the basis of sherry makes it more comfortable to introduce it to people who've never tried it before. So we encourage people who are familiar with the drink to sort of find a high quality sherry that we have here, or people who've never tried it before to understand that they can ask questions and progress with it.
Yeah, and obviously it's not compulsory. We don't want to force people. Everyone
No.
doesn't have to drink it.
No.
Drink it. But what do you think are the sort of ways into it for people who come with different tastes? Because I certainly, that when I pour it out in my place in Spain, for example, people's expectation of that is it might be like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chablis or something, and then they get a very different hit when they get it. Now, how do you deal with that?
We do sort of tasters with people as well. If we're looking to encourage people to try it, I always encourage recommending a couple of different ones to try and sort of see how they're feeling about them.
Right.
So for example, I know if you came in looking for a Fino, you have a Puerto Fino, we'd find out what sort of Fino you're looking for and sort of the sort of undertones. If you want something salty like a Manzanilla, something more floral like the Puerto Fino you're drinking. So we'll recommend an introduction flight or a dry to sweet flight, which is something we have, which is a good way to introduce people to 6 different kinds of sherries that we have. Or we will do little testers with people and sort of see what flavour profiles they like.
And I did do, as I told you, I did a mystery shopper when I first arrived 2 days ago, I think, and snuck in here about 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And you absolutely did do the Fino, Well, what kind of Fino do you like as you went through that? And that was great because I think it does give, it makes it a conversation.
Yeah.
As opposed to a sort of fait accompli in terms of what you're going to get through. So what would you say is the percentage of, I'm sure you know from the numbers, but what percentage of people who come in here for a Spanish meal for tapas actually have sherry as part of the mix?
As I wouldn't know how to describe it as a percentage, but I think we get a lot more people coming in willing to try it than they'd expected when they come into the restaurant.
Okay.
I think a lot more people don't plan to come here as a sherry bar, they do plan to come here as a meal, but we leave with a high percentage of people having tried it for the first time and being more open to it and leaving having enjoyed it than people coming in directly for it, which I think
what more can you do on that
exactly.
basis? So is there anything else you'd like to reveal to us before we leave this thing?
I do in fact have a Tio Pepe tattoo that I got a couple of years ago, just to represent.
Amazing. We will do a cut into that separately, but you can't make more of a commitment than that, can you?
Yes, I do.
I'm feeling bad now that I haven't tried harder.
You can come and get one as well.
Okay, Louise. Well, thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much.
So Lorna, here we are at Ambiente, and we've been talking to a whole load of different people across the whole Ambiente footprint in Leeds, around York, and many of them, of course, are really steeped in sherry. So to some extent, we're sort of preaching to the converted, and I asked them lots of interesting questions, and we all love sherry.
Yes.
You're relatively new, as I understand it, to the business here.
Yes.
So you experience it maybe a little bit like some of the customers who come in here who perhaps aren't that familiar with it.
Yeah.
What's your kind of sherry journey been so far?
So obviously when I started working here, I'd never tried sherry before, and I always thought it was like really sweet ones. That was kind of the only thing. So it was really like interesting to find out how many different sherries there were.
Right.
So Louise, she let me try a few. Did a little bit of like sherry training with me, and I kind of found which ones I liked and got a nice like sense of each sherry so that I could then talk to customers about it as well.
And which ones do you like?
So I really like the Fino sherries. I like a dry drinks.
Like this?
Yes, exactly. The Puerto Fino is my all-time favourite. Yeah.
Okay. Puerto,
Puerto
a little bit robust.
Yes. But I really like those ones. I'm not a massive fan of the sweeter ones. I don't really have much of a sweet tooth.
No.
But a nice dry light.
as they say.
Well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And how do you go about like explaining sherry to customers? Because a lot of people, as you say, do come in here probably not knowing very much about it.
Exactly. So a lot of people come in and they say, oh, it's like my grandmother's drink. And I'm just like, well, actually, there's a lot of different ones that you can try. And I kind of like to bring my own personality through that as well and be like, well, I'm relatively like new to the world of sherry and I've been won over. So I can definitely like find one that you would like as well. And I've got like a good enough knowledge now to be
Right,
able to
right.
help customers find the one that they like.
And so let's say you weren't working here, heaven forbid, in the future, and you were, you know, in Spain or going to a bar. Would you actually order sherry?
Probably not. No, I would usually only drink like wine
Right.
more.
Right.
I was never really interested by sherry.
Right.
But I'm really glad that I've been introduced to it
So
now.
in the future, you might.
Definitely will
Right.
now.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And
yes.
have you been over to Spain to any of the sherry? But because I know Ambiente do quite a lot of trips over there and things.
Yeah. So I haven't been on one of those
Right.
trips yet.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. This video should be helpful in that regard.
Exactly.
You can get that sorted.
So I've not actually been able to have the chance to go over there and really
Right.
have the whole experience.
Because that does make. I think everyone will tell you it makes such a huge difference
Oh,
when
yeah.
you see these wines in context.
Yes, exactly.
So cool. So and you haven't been branded yet with any tattoos or anything?
No, I have
in that regard?
I have no sherry tattoos as of
Well,
yet,
that's something to look forward
but
to.
maybe in a couple of years' time, Louise can twist my arm.
Indeed. Well, Lorna, thanks very much. Great to talk to you.
Thank
Cheers.
you very much.
So that concludes the first part of our visit with Ambiente here in York. I hope you can see now why, when I stumbled upon Tabanco by Ambiente in the summer, I really felt this was a place we had to come back to make our first film about a sherry bar restaurant in the UK, and also why there was no finer place to celebrate International Sherry Week than with the real, true sherry aficionados here at Ambiente. Join me in part 2, where we take the journey to Leeds, around 30 miles from here, to another outpost of the Ambiente Empire in the Calls in Leeds, where we will join them for a fantastic pairing of sherry and food on a special dinner to celebrate International Sherry Week. That'll be coming in 2 to 3 weeks' time. But in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. That way you'll immediately know when the next videos are coming out. And if you have any experience with Ambiente or any other related item in this video, please do let me know in the comments below, and we will attempt to build it in to future episodes. But until the next time, from all of us here at Ambiente in York, salud y nos vemos. Salud.
Have we kept you well lubricated, sir?
You have, yeah.